But first, I want to go to that polling. Labor's constitutionally entrenched Indigenous voice is now behind in overall terms and across 3 states. Now, that matters because to win a referendum, there has to be a majority of the people and a majority of the states. And at least on this poll, there's now neither. Resolve polling, published in today's Sydney Morning Herald, initially had 42% yes for the voice, 40% no, and 18% undecided. But when not given the option of sitting on the fence, the results came out 51% no and just 49% yes, with Queensland, Western Australia and South Australia now all no states. But before all the no voters breathe a sigh of relief and relax, it's vital to remember that the campaign hasn't really yet begun. The final wording of the referendum question still to pass the Parliament, and only then will the Prime Minister set the date for the poll. Now, it's true, given the near universal fear of appearing to be racist, this polling might actually understate opposition to the voice. But lest the no camp become complacent, I want to remind people again that the Yes campaign has quite literally tens of millions of dollars waiting to be spent. And if advertising can buy votes, then no one has the potential to shift the electorate like the Yes mob will now try its hardest to do. Woke foundations, public woke companies, sporting clubs, people wanting to curry favour with the government have all fallen over themselves to donate to the Yes campaign. Just last Friday, $2 million from Rio Tinto. Earlier, $1 million from the Pratt Foundation, $5 million also from the Ramsay Foundation, even though Paul Ramsay, and I knew the man, unlike some of the people behind this donation, well, he was arrested on Liberal. Meanwhile, the No campaign hasn't even been given tax deductibility. Now, can you believe the unfairness of that, despite the Prime Minister promising months ago that they would get it? So while the No campaign should be encouraged by this Resolve poll and other recent polls, that should mean, though, redoubling their efforts rather than any complacency, given the avalanche of money coming in for the Yes campaign. This whole Voice campaign has been unfair from the start. There was the initial pretence from the PM that this was just modest change, just being polite and gracious to Aboriginal people, even though it's the biggest change to our constitution we've ever been asked to make. Then there was the initial refusal to fund the national mail-out of the Yes and No cases, which has been a feature of every previous referendum. Then there's a so-called education campaign that almost sounds indistinguishable from the Yes campaign ads, and another supposedly impartial campaign about to kick off. And of course, the ultimate unfairness, the fact that only one side so far has tax deductibility for its donations. But it could get even worse. If the Prime Minister, who's made the Voice very much his personal crusade, were to lose, this would do massive damage to the Albanese government and well and truly establish Peta Credlin as a serious alternative Prime Minister. Yet having turned the Voice into the heart and soul of his Prime Ministership to the point where it seems to take priority over everything else, including bread and butter concerns of voters, well, the PM can hardly drop the issue now. It'd be like Kevin Rudd dropping his emissions trading scheme in 2010, the greatest so-called moral challenge of our times, he said, and we all remember what that did to Rudd. So there's a suggestion today from a prominent Labor pollster who agrees that the Voice is in trouble, that the vote should be postponed, even hold it concurrently, he says, with the next election. Here's the pollster Cos Samaras on Melbourne Radio this morning.
I think the point you made, which is that the referendum probably will do well if it was to be postponed, or even if the referendum was to take place at the same time as the next federal election. That will actually give someone like Anthony Albanese a bit of a sort of strategic advantage as well, because Dutton will be very careful in that space, because obviously the yes vote is extremely high in teal seats and he needs to win some of the seats back.
Now, understand the tactic here. Labor reckons that if the Voice vote were to coincide with the election, the Liberals would have to change their position or lose any chance of winning back teal seats. It would, the theory goes, create infighting amongst the Liberals, hold back their chances of focusing on a fight with the government over everyday policy concerns, all the while the big money from the yes vote and the unions would keep pushing the voice. Now, sneaky, very plausible. Yet the whole Voice campaign supposedly is just about being respectful to First Australians. It's not. It's always been about power, never about recognition. Power and co-governance, the Trojan horse of separatism, of treaties and compensation, with the end result a racially divided nation that takes us backwards, not forwards, together. Now, that's why people are turning against it, because they're starting to grasp that this is so much more and so much worse than Labor's willing to let on. Despite the lies and spin, though, Australians are starting to see through it, and that's the real problem for the Prime Minister.